things with the when you're talking about the New Orleans Saints, and I mentioned their new coordinator, Clint Kubiak. Here's a guy that, in the past, you've seen things with Sean Payton. It's been the Wildcat stuff, the Taysom Hill. We can go back and even talk about the with Drew Brees and stuff, the things that Sean used to do. But this is different, a different attack. It really, when you look at him, how they play now, they are pretty balanced with their personnel groups, the 11 personnel, the 3 wide receivers, the 12 personnel, 1 back, the 2 tight ends. But they've got a big mix of, in this game especially, they went 21 personnel, which is 2 running backs and 1 tight end. This is a team that plays with a fullback. And so they kind of do it a couple of different ways. Only the 49ers and the Dolphins, I looked this up, played more 21 personnel this weekend. And what's interesting is the Saints ran the ball really, really well either way. It was one of those things where if it was 1 back, ran the ball well. 2 backs, ran the ball well. So it's just, both. It was funny. The balance of it was like 5.8 yards a carry.
Yeah,
in those personnel groups, and Carolina might have a little bit to do with that, but Saints were coming off the ball. Alvin Kamara is one of those guys.
I love this matchup because you get a chance to play a good run team,
right,
and a good defensive team.
Yep, you do. You'll learn a lot about your football team. I think this. I mentioned about the Saints and the number of snaps they play under center. Like I said, the Rams were the only other team that played fewer shotgun snaps than the Saints. It's all about Alvin Kamara then. They want to be able to get the ball to him where he can play downhill. We talked about that. You're going to get a lot of movement. You're going to get a lot of motion. Another thing that I was able to look up and watch them play, I'm like, gosh, dang, it seems like they have motion and then a motion behind that. So, that's something you have to kind of be aware of. You're going to
absolutely. Those are the kind of teams you want to emulate.
Yeah, they had
the Cowboys have had problems with all these teams.
All of them
under Marinelli and Quinn. Yep. It was an issue for like 8 years.
It is. It's crazy, but I think with Zimmer a little bit more buttoned up here, at least I hope so. Saints ran 62 plays, 49 of them involved motion. That's 79%. 35 of those involved motion at the snap. And so, okay, this is where you get that San Francisco vibe, where all of a sudden, where it's Juszczyk and those guys, it's all of a sudden it's a fullback, he's offset, and now they're motioning him to the side they're going to run, or they're motioning him out there, he sets up, and then they take a motion behind with, say, Kamara, and now they're going to throw the screen over there. So they set up a blocker, they set up another blocker, and then they motion the back to get the screen. So it's really kind of a creative way of doing things. So you really have to kind of be ready for them, trying to get guys in better blocking positions.
And Brian, do you feel like all NFL teams should be running like this?
I thought it was fascinating to watch. I really did.
It is.
I don't get to see.
It's fun, but it's also more effective.
It makes me now want to go watch San Francisco, really just sit down. And I know Dallas plays them, and that's when you kind of do your evaluation. But after watching the Saints, I'm kind of thinking like, damn, this is kind of fun. When you have, 2 backs, motion a back, motion the second back, then throw him the ball. There's some fun things that you're going to do here.
I think you could get a lot of people excited about Clint Kubiak as your head coach. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, all these San Francisco, these Rams guys. I mean, they understand it. They really, really do. I mentioned the wide receivers. They get in a lot of trips formation, which is the 3 wide receiver formations. Chris Olave, I think, is the most dangerous receiver they have. They like to move him around. He plays on the outside. He'll also play in the slot. Against the Panthers, he's lined up predominantly on the right side of the right side of the Saints formation, which would be the left side of the Cowboys defense. So let's see if there's something going on there where they feel more comfortable throwing him the ball over on that side. He only had the 2 catches I mentioned, but predominantly his routes were over on that right side of the Saints offense, and that'll be the left side of the Cowboys left side of the Cowboys defense. I mentioned Alvin Kamara. I think his explosiveness. He had 3 carries of 10-plus yards in this game, and they hand him the ball, like I say, with Carr under center, and they're going to try and run this thing downhill. Where he could be equally dangerous, I believe, is catching the football out of the backfield. He had 5 receptions. It was only for 27 yards, but the staff had him running 14 routes in this game. He ran 14 different routes in this game. And you think about, for a running back, that's kind of like wide receiver numbers. That's like third wide receiver type numbers there.
14 different routes.
Yeah, 14 different routes is what they had this guy
Talented
do.
guy.
Yeah, so very talented guy. And so they have no problem throwing the ball, as I mentioned. You have to be ready for the screen. You have to be ready for routes in the flat. They missed him on the angle route, or what we call the Texas route, which is that outside-inside route. They ran an out with him and in with him, and by playing him out wide. So he can line up outside.
I think this offense has a lot of potential. I know they scored so many against Carolina, but when you have to defend the entire field,
that's the problem. And that when you get. That was the one thing that Dallas did a really good job against Cleveland in the first half. What did they make Cleveland have to do? Defend the whole field. They were from sideline to sidelines. The ability to get the ball to the outside, maybe run it up inside there, the way Dak with the boots and the waggles and things like that. So, that's something the Saints are going to try and do. This offensive line is a veteran offensive line, with the exception of the left tackle, Fuaga. Fuaga is one of my favorite guys in the draft. He's really a powerful guy. He moves really, really well. The coaches trust him to handle the job, Dawson. They didn't give him much help in this game. They said, "Okay, young man, hey, you're gonna be one-on-one. Let's see if you can handle it." And
who will the Cowboys send after him?
To me, I'd send. He is going to be a powerful big man, hard guy to kind of get around because he's athletic and he's big. But I wouldn't be scared of sending in. If you want to sit there and if you want to go with Nealon, and I heard today, I know Nealon showed up on the injury report with a calf, and I was told, hey, don't worry about it. Everything's fine on that.
Nice.
So that's something if you're worried about that.
But you're not thinking we're going to victimize this guy with Micah?
It's on the right side. That's where I think they're struggling right now. Lucas Patrick is the starter. He's dealing with a leg injury, so his status might be up in the air. And that meant that Landon Young filled in for Patrick when he went out. I mentioned McCoy at center. He's very good. Cesar Ruiz and Trevor Penning on the right side. They gave up some pressures. That's where this thing, I think, can hinge for the Cowboys. I could see Zimmer attacking these offensive linemen with more movement, blitzes. The Panthers really didn't attack these guys like they need to. But when there were breakdowns, it was on the right side of that offensive line. So keep an eye on anything to be on the left of the Dallas defense. Maybe some movement, the twist. Dallas did a great job with the A-gap blitzes, the twist stunts, the movement, anything like that to kind of make these guys have to be athletes, because I don't think they're that great athletes. But that's kind of where I feel like this game could very well hinge. You're going to have to stop Kamara. That's going to be the key to this thing, and be ready for the ball to come out pretty quickly here from this quarterback. I don't think he's going to. This coordinator is going to let him get hit in this game. How well you cover on the back end could also dictate if the ball gets out quick or not, too.
Terrific report once again, sir, on the Saints offense. Krusty's Corner brought to you by Reliant Air Conditioning. Let me ask you this. Growing up, I always kind of felt bad for the Saints. It was the brown bag era.
Oh, yeah.
So as they started to have success in the 2000s, I was like, cool. Good for them.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's one of those kind of slept on rivalries here.
When I was at LSU, they had Jim Mora as their coach. You remember?
Yeah.
Playoffs. Jim Mora. Jim Mora, the Saints. They had what was called the Dome Patrol. They had linebackers, Ricky Jackson. They had some quality players at the time. So the 80s they were starting. But you're right. Before that, they were horrendous. And Mike Ditka goes in there, gives up all the picks for Ricky Williams. They needed the players.
Brutal.
This is an organization that drafted Russell Erxleben, the punter kicker from Texas, in the first round.
Ouch.
When they were a bad team. So they've had their moments of, guys going in there and kind of really, effing things up pretty good.
Yeah.
And then the fans suffered for a long time. And, Sean got in there. Sean turned some things around. But, it's kind of gone backwards a little bit. But, I think there's some – they've got some quality. The Olavis, the Kamaras, going out and getting the quarterback. I think those kind of things kind of help you along the way. With this Saints defense, and I'm really – this was one of those times where I was – you think about the opponent and you think about the quarterback and you think about the youth of the quarterback with Bryce Young, and you wonder did the Saints play this game with Bryce Young in mind with what they tried to do to him? And because what happened, the Saints, I feel like, have got some guys that are legitimate pass rushers. When you talk about Cam Jordan, when you talk about Carl Granderson, when you also, Chase Young, who they, was with the Washington and then with the 49ers, these guys can rush the passer. But this was a weird game in a way, and I had to look this up because I kept noticing on tape. The Saints had, and this is exactly what it was from the metrics. The Saints had 5 off-ball players generate a pressure in this game.
Yeah, they were blitzing.
Yeah,
they've got good linebackers.
Yeah, the Saints sent 12 different players who did not play edge or defensive tackles on blitzes in this game. They got 8 pressures on 14 blitzes. So that's something. I don't know if it was one of those things. There was one time I was watching their nickelback, Alante Taylor, had 3 sacks in this game. So, here's a team that was bringing safeties. They were bringing linebackers. They're bringing nickel guys. They were doing things in a way that really gave the Carolina Panthers a lot of problems. And I don't know how you go into this game thinking like, okay, well, this might be our plan. But they might also feel like there was one of the teams that was 28th in the league last year in sacks. And they might feel like, you know what, if we don't generate pressure, we're in trouble in these games. So this could be the new identity of the Saints, is finding a way to bring pressure, whether it's slot pressure, safety pressure, linebacker pressure. That might be that way because of but I mentioned about Granderson and Jordan and also with Young. Those guys I think are capable pass rushers, but it was pressure through other means that they were able to get that home.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love it if they try that against the Cowboys.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because Dak understands that. Dak is, there was times in this game where where they gave up a sack. Bryce Young moved a running back from his left to his right, and they brought the pressure off the left. It ended up being a sack, and the running back he moved never blocked anybody.
It's a big difference going up against Bryce Young versus Dak.
And maybe it was one of these games where they felt like, okay, we can confuse this kid. They're going to play a ton of press coverage. That's just the way they are. They've done it for the last 2 years.
A lot of man.
Yeah, they I don't think they respected Carolina's wide receivers in this game at all. The Carolina actually only had 5 completions when the Saints played man coverage against them. So a lot of single high look.
Dak dominates that.
Yeah, and what you got to worry about a little bit though, and missing maybe Ferguson in this game, or having a tight end when you play single high, is those seam routes that you're able to kind of get the ball up the field that way.
Dak loves throwing those.
Yeah, loves throwing the seam.
Man, it's probably his best throw. I wonder if Hunter Lipke, you start to see a lot more of him take over that role a little bit.
Let me just throw it out there. Big game potentially, not big game, but big game for him as a Dallas Cowboy is Luke Schoonmaker.
Sure.
Luke, if these tight ends don't play, Luke Schoonmaker is going to have to find a way to step up in one of these games. He is going to have to be a guy that they rely on here. So we'll see how it all plays out there. We mentioned Marshawn Lattimore on the injury report right there. I'll say this. I went back and looked at this because I was curious when the last time that Lattimore and CeeDee Lamb played. They did play against each other in 2021. Lattimore carried him 5 times in that game at 36 routes. And Lattimore had an interception, only allowed 1 reception on 3 targets. Against all the other defensive backs in that game, Lamb had 6 receptions for 86 yards. So if Lattimore doesn't play, you're going to see, we mentioned McKistry. McKistry was he was an accomplished DB at Alabama, but last week he only gave up 1 reception on 3 targets. He had 17 snaps that he played in as well. So that's something that you have to keep an eye on, because the one thing is that Lattimore, he's got that kind of ability to lock your guy down. But with the hamstring, I think that's maybe a little bit of a tall order. He hasn't practiced the last couple of days. I mentioned about the pass rush. Chase Young, I'm going to say, is probably the guy that I would worry about the most. I know Cam Jordan. Cam Jordan's a lot like when you look at what Tank Lawrence does for the Cowboys. He's a good run defender. He's got the ability to pass rush at times, but I don't think he has the quickness, though, of maybe what Tank was. So they went and got Chase Young, and he plays mainly on the right side. He's going to, he gets that opportunity to go against Tyler Guyton. Of all the guys that rushed, Young had the most pressures in this game. I mean, he had 25 pass rushes, and he had 6 pressures, and you could see it. That was double more than any of the other Saints pass rushers in this game. So you have to be ready for him jumping around blocks. He's not afraid to take a chance and just rush inside to attempt to make a stop. He'll freelance a little bit on you, in that different way. I mentioned Granderson. He's kind of a long, edgy, rangy type of a guy. Plays well really on the move. He's got a slippery element to his game. So we'll see what happens with Terrence Steele I thought played really well for you last week. We'll see if he can back that up with another good game and having to deal with Granderson. The linebackers, they're not as good as what you saw last week. The linebackers at Cleveland are clearly better players. Pete Werner and Demario Davis are like I say, the linebackers on this team. There's nothing flashy about these guys. I've seen them both get in position to make plays and then miss in space. The one thing that the Browns linebackers were able to do, they were able to tackle. And so this group right here, with what I saw in the games, was that Warner and Davis both position guys, but might miss as well. So I feel like I say the crew you played in Cleveland is a little bit better group for you to go against right there.
Well, it's about time Demario Davis isn't one of the best linebackers in the league. Seems like for the last 10 years, he's just been a model of consistency.
Yeah, well, it was, like I say, with Warner, there were times where the ball got to the outside a little bit, and he was running to get there and just was a step or two late. So
they're not the fastest guys. They tried to add some speed with Willie Gay, who they brought in from the Chiefs.
Yeah. This front, as I mentioned, I gave you the names of the guys. They'll like to angle the front, and the combination with the linebackers, they'll angle the front, and then they'll fill with the linebacker to the back side of that. So whatever way they angle, say they go to the left, they'll take the linebacker and put him to the right. So what they're really trying to do is kind of fill all the gaps there in the run defense. And so that's the way that they're going to kind of play. So you might be able to pop a run or two on these guys, because what will happen is they'll slant one way and then the ball might go the other. So they'll slant themselves. They'll take themselves out of the play. Carolina was able to kind of take advantage of that a couple of different times. We'll see if Dallas is committed to trying to run the football a little bit more in this game. And if they have some success, it might be because you see a slant front and then they're able to hit the slant front going opposite of where they're taking the football here. So it's a defense. It's with the pass rush. It's been a lot about the blitzes, especially last week. I will be interested to see if they try and do the same thing to Dak. I think that would kind of be disastrous for them if they try and blitz him, because Dak won't miss those reads like that kid at Carolina did last week.
No, that's for sure. I think your best bet is just trying to time something up nicely to confuse the lineman, like what happened. It ended up being a touchdown for the Cowboys to Brandon Cooks, but the lineman screwed it up and allowed a free rusher right up the middle.
Inside,
and so if you're the Saints, like,
bust,
can we try and confuse the offensive line, because Dak's not going to be confused.